So you've made it to the late game. You've got your units upgraded, your eco's on track, and you just need that little something to put you over the edge so that you can grab onto the trophy of victory. That sweet, sweet nectar of triumph. Well, that, my friends, is where your Imperial Age technologies from the castle come into play, right? Every civilization has a unique Imperial Age technology that gives them another bonus in the game that can turn the tides of battle in their favor. Now, Imperial Age technologies are very expensive, but compared to their Castle Age variants, well, they often have a major effect on the game. And in fact, I actually think that there are a lot of really good Imperial Age unique technologies out there, but they're not always easy to implement or to afford. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at these technologies and ranking them for the different civilizations so that you know when you get in the late game if you have a stud or you have a dud in the unique technologies department. Folks, let's get out there and get after it. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jimmy James 59, and last week I put out my best Castle Age unique technologies tier list. Had a great response to it, a lot of comments, and today we're coming with you part 2 looking at the Imperial Age unique technologies. If you liked last video, you're going to like this video, and I recommend that you show that by hitting the like button on this video and leaving a comment with your thoughts on what I have to say. And as always, if you enjoy my content more generally, I highly recommend that you subscribe to the channel so that way you are always in the loop when I got new videos coming out. Now, Imperial Age technologies, getting into the criteria of this tier list, we have to think about them a little bit differently than Castle Age techs. Castle Age techs are usually not as powerful and they're usually not as expensive, right? Castle Age technologies are not game breakers, and I think that when it comes to a Castle Age technology, its affordability is a bit more important because you just don't have the economy to research really expensive technologies. Now, that's somewhat true for Imperial Age technologies, but for a little bit different reasons, and I'll get into that here in a moment. Imperial Age technologies, though, sometimes are game breakers, and I have 3 criteria that I'm going to use in this tier list to help me sort out where I'm going to put civilizations where. The foremost criteria is that we think about technologies that allow you to close out games decisively and as soon as possible, right? These civs that have this sort of technology, when you do research them, you get a really massive power spike, a massive advantage, and it just makes you hard to stop, right? As you might imagine, when you're trying to win a game, conquer your opponent, that is extremely valuable. Now, the second aspect here is I do want to think about value, and value on this channel is really the interaction, right? The crossroads of performance and affordability. Having good value on a technology is important for Imperial Age because Imperial Age is largely about having big armies, right? You might not have necessarily really large armies in Castle Age, right? But in Imperial Age, you definitely do. You're going to have large armies, and because military production is so important, a really expensive technology that isn't getting you that military advantage then, or is causing you to have to not make military units, and then you wind up having a much smaller military compared to your opponent, that can put you into a lot of trouble, and you might have a new technology but no units to make it with. So we have to think about that. So that's different than Castle Age, because Castle Age was more about not having the economy to really invest in researching something and slowing down your Imperial Age time, potentially. This is more about sustaining military production. The third criteria that I'm going to consider here, and I think is a plus, but maybe is a little bit behind the other two technologies, are techs that help you extend games so that you can outlast your opponent, right? There are a few of these out there, and they are good, they're decent quality, but they are just a little bit behind the other two, and the reason why is this. Taking on a strategy where basically you're going to try to outlast your opponent leaves a lot of room for you to make errors, strategic blunders, tactical blunders, to, not have as good a macro as your opponent, so you just wind up getting outmassed, right? Extending games is good, and it can help give you an advantage, and there's definitely a time and place to sort of play defensively, of course. And I'm not thinking about defensive technologies here. I'm just talking about technologies that are going to make the game where the win condition is make the game last longer, so that, say, your opponent starts to run out of resources and you are going to, say, have more, or you're able to produce a certain kind of unit, but that you're going to keep throwing away over time, that sort of thing. I think that just leaves a lot of places where your own strategy and tactics can create errors. And so I think in Imperial Age, you want to focus on ending games. I think in Feudal Age and Castle Age, there's a lot more latitude to play it a bit safer, wait until, you get to your win condition in Imperial Age, let's say, because you can close out the game then. Once we get to Imperial Age and you got your techs researched, we're starting to just really deal in a place where the units you have, and you don't want to be in a position where now it's just about making mistakes, or maybe your win condition's gotten away from you, right? Imperial Age, you want to start closing out the game, because there's Trash Wars, I think, are notorious for just being pretty difficult to manage, and you might wind up getting burned on that. So anyways, those are the criteria, and what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and jump into the tier list, and I am going to start off with the Aztecs, per usual. The Aztecs' unique technology is Garland Wars, giving your infantry +4 attack, and I like that as a B tier technology. I do think it gives you a pretty good power spike over other infantry, and even helps you deal with some cavalry as well, to maybe a smaller extent. This is really good for the Aztecs because it's pretty common, if you say go Eagles, for opponents to want to make the swordsman line against you, so having that advantage is really nice. I think that this tech, though, right, it's 450 food, 750 gold. It's really dependent on you having enough gold. The Aztec relic bonus is going to help. And in general, infantry can just be kind of weak to crossbows, which is a good reason why you have really strong skirmishers once you get the atlatl technology. Still, infantry move kind of slowly, and I think I worry a lot of times about getting, say, outmaneuvered, and you have this extra attack on your infantry, but maybe your opponent doesn't even have to fight your infantry or can run away. So I think that does limit some of the upside. Next up, we have the Bengalis. I'll put the Bengalis Mahayana tech in the C tier, right? Giving you a bit more extra population space, which you can use to spend on military, get a little bit of an advantage. I think this is one of these things, it's giving you a slight edge as opposed to a decisive edge, right? Being able to have, let's say, 10 or 11 pop space, kind of like the Goths bonus, except you have to pay for it. And it's 800 wood, 650 gold. If you're making the Ratha, which as of the publication of this video is pretty much the only good unit I think you have with Bengalis, that's really cutting into your Bengali production, and that's worrisome to me. And you just don't have a ton of military options other than that. If you are going, say, like elephant archers, maybe battle elephants, the gold cost is still pretty prohibitive there. So I think that's got to go into C tier. Then we have the Berbers, and Berbers Mahrabi camels, allowing your camels to regenerate HP. I'm going to put that in the C tier. I think this is something else that's operating at the margins. In general, with HP regeneration, in order to take advantage of it, you need to actually disengage from the battlefield, which means you're not fighting. And that may take time to allow that HP regeneration to happen, and so I just don't think it's helping you win fights as much as it is helping you recharge between battles. And so, the best thing about this tech is that it's not really draining your gold cost very much, right? 700 food, 300 gold. It is a decent bit of food, but, if you're making camels, like camel riders, for instance, then, you're going to be saving a lot of food anyways. I've just seen very few sets where this feels like the key to victory for the Berber player. Okay, next up we have the Bohemians, and the Bohemians' unique tech Hussite reforms. I'm going to give it in the A tier. Your monks and basically everything you research from the monastery goes from costing gold to food. I think on Arena, this is easy S tier, right? Arena, boom, just put it up there, don't think twice. I do think on more open maps that we tend to see, then I think it's a little bit closer to maybe more like a B tier, just because you tend to have a lot of light cavalry late, you have a lot more ranged units prowling the field, killing monks, doing things like that. And I think it becomes a little bit more situational. But I think you put those together, A tier. It's a little expensive, 800 food, 450 gold. So again, you're going to have to get your food count back up. But with the mining upgrades for the Bohemians, you probably are going to get a nice gold advantage. So yeah, I think it's a really solid A tier tech. Next up with the Britons, the Warwolf technology, giving your trebuchets splash damage, making them 100% accurate. I gotta put this in the S tier. This allows you to straight up win Treb Wars with pretty much any civilization. It enables you to start, and that enables you to start closing out games quickly, because you get a major power spike in terms of your ability to take map control. And not only that, but it's not very intense on your gold cost. It's 800 wood though, and 400 gold. But in Imperial Age, wood is really starting to become not that valuable of a resource. Now, you're going to be making a lot of wood gold units with Britons probably anyways, but I think the best time to research this is once you have a big Arbalist army, maybe stop production for a little bit, and boom, get into that wood, right, and research this tech. It's really fantastic. I think this is a easy S tier for me. All right, next up we have the Bulgarians, and Bulgarians, the Bagains tech, giving your swordsman +5 melee armor, so you have 9 melee armor. I think that this technology is sneaky good, sneaky underrated. It can be a great counter to some pretty difficult matchups, right? So for instance, I played a game recently on the ladder, and I used this sort of technology to go up against units like the Chakram Thrower and the Mameluke, right? That, Bulgarians are a pretty mobile civ for the most part, going things like Knights, Hussars, and infantry tend to get eaten up by the Chakram Thrower. And this, giving you that melee armor, you can just kind of go forward in a really consistent manner. And with Bulgarians, you're not paying for any of the swordsman line upgrades. So boom, 200 swordsman, you can just crank it out from the jump. And that's a pretty good power spike. And so I think I gotta put that in the B, but I do think, like all infantry technologies, if you are up against a lot of archer units, you're probably just not getting the value here. And so I think you have to package this. If you're going with this unit, you got to fit it into your army comp and maybe research it at the right time. So maybe, after you've thinned out your opponent's Arbalist or Cav Archers, maybe something like that. It's just a little too situational for me to put it in A tier. Okay, next up, Burgundians. Man. Flemish Revolution. I think it has to be S tier. Turning all of your villagers into Flemish militia, it can decisively end games, and I think that it's more just about it being done right. where you're on a lot of TCs so you can reboom really quickly. That's the real problem with this technology, is that if you're on 6 or 7 TCs, it doesn't take you that long to reboom. This technology just completely changes the character of a game, and I don't think in a good way necessarily. The only upside is that at least it's kind of expensive, but I still think it's way too powerful, and I personally hope they change it. Okay. Moving on to the Burmese. Mana per cavalry. I think I'll put it in the C tier, actually. Basically, your cavalry get 5 extra damage against archer units. That's really good, and you have a weakness to archers with Burmese. I think that there's a couple issues here. One, if you're going cavalry, it's pretty likely your opponent has halberdiers, and this is not helping you. Your cavalry are still going to die pretty hard to them. And if you want to go something like Knight Skirmisher as a composition to deal with, say, Arbalist Halberdier, well, with Burmese, your skirmishers are not very good. They can be kind of taken out by Arbalists, so I think it's a problem. The fact that this technology comes into play in Imperial Age feels to me often like it's just a little late. So I gotta put this in the C tier. I think it's okay. I think it's giving you gotta remember, these are Imperial Age technologies. There's a reason there's no F tier. All of these, or at least almost all of these, are doing something good for you, right? That's one of the reasons why they're so expensive. So again, just because something's in a C tier doesn't mean that it sucks and you should never research it. It just means relative to these other technologies, and thinking about the criteria we established at the beginning, that's where it ranks. Next up we have the Byzantines. Byzantines Logistica. I'll put it in the B tier. So, the extra infantry attack is good. They already have a lot of that. I think the trample damage for me is where this technology is really useful, because this actually kind of allows your cataphracts, which otherwise I think die kind of hard to cavaliers. You can fight cavaliers pretty well with Logistica cataphracts. And at that point, it really leaves your only weakness to be Arbalist, and so you can go something like Skirmishers. So this is a great unit. I think it's a good bump. I think it can be the tipping point in some battles if you're up against heavy cavalry. And so I think I got to give it that B tier. You know, at the end of the day, though, I will say 800 food, 600 gold is pretty expensive. And I think you're really trading more effectively. I think you could probably beat cavaliers in a big enough scrum, but I wouldn't say that is necessarily insanely decisive in favor of cataphracts. I think it just allows you to trade as opposed to being dominated by cavaliers, and so that's important to keep in mind. Next up we have the Celts, and boy, right, Celts, your siege, I forget the name of this, Fura Celtica, I think. Your siege is 40% more HP. I think to me that's easy A tier. Pushing S tier. Honestly, this is pushing S tier. You know, because you combine this with faster firing siege weapons, faster working siege workshops. I mean, it's just really, you're getting a lot of value. I do think the one thing for me that keeps this from being S tier is that I still think bombard cannons are a pretty big problem for you. Even though you are able to sustain more shots and you might be able to press forward more, it just depends. It's so close. It's a really good technology. Let me say it this way. I think this is so close to S tier. If they gave the trebuchets more HP, easy S tier. Easy S tier. The thing with Siege is that Siege is really population efficient, so you might not have them in as grand a numbers as, say, you know, halberdiers, hussars, etc. And so it still just takes like a few well-placed bombard cannon shots to, you know, now you have dead units still. And so again, this is great. It's helping you not take as many of those. I still just don't think it quite gets into S tier. Next up, we have Chinese. The rocketry tech giving you, I think, +2 attack on your Chukunu, I think +4 on Scorpion. I think I like this in the B tier. Somewhere between B and C. So, it's good, but it's really dependent on you going Scorpions or Chukunu. You're probably using the latter a bit more, so Scorpions are a bit more situational. I just don't think it's ending games. You know, I think I have to put it into the C tier, and I'll tell you why. Because whether you're going Chukunu or Scorpion, both of those units are pretty weak to Onagers. And this is a 600 wood, 600 gold technology, so it's eating into your Scorpion or Chukunu production, and I think that's a problem. I think that's a real problem for you. So, I think to me, this just gets us really into C tier. It's decent, right? But I don't think it's the thing that's going to change the character of games. Next up is Cumans, and this for me is a really easy D tier. Probably put it, maybe even put it F tier if we had an F tier here. Like, this is F tier in 1v1s or 2v2s because it's allowing your allies to make 5 kept checks per castle, right? I think you can get some value with it, particularly on the flank in 3v3 or 4v4. But the only way you get that value is if you make a lot of castles, and that's a bit more difficult in a meta that tends to be knight crossbow focused in team games. And even just castles are very expensive. I don't think that this technology usually is winning you games. I think it just allows you to annoy your opponents a bit more in most cases. Next up we have Dravidians. So, Woot Steel. I think Woot Steel is really strong. You know, it's pretty expensive, but allowing your infantry to and your stable units, right? That's very important to recognize here. To ignore armor is strong, right? This means your halberdiers are going to fare better, not just against other halberdiers, but other cavalry. I mean, anything it attacks. It's going to allow your champions and your unique unit, you know, the same thing. You're getting a lot of damage out in the field. I mean, if you think about, it's like having +5. It's basically like having, you know, the Vikings chieftain tech if you're up against, say, like paladins, you know, that have, you know, 2+3 melee armor. That's a great bonus. The fact that it affects stable units is really, really interesting because, I mean, like, I think there are people that have done some of these memes that, that Dravidian light cavalry trades really well against elite Teutonic knights because so much of the melee damage, right, is a part of that. You could trade well against units like the Boyar, for instance, you know, where they have a lot of melee. So the fact that it affects the stables for me makes it different than, say, something like Aztec's Garland Wars. I think that if the Dravidians had knights, even if they were like terrible ones, I think this would be an S tier technology because the only problem for me is that other than the sort of strange Dravidian light cav, you know, play you might do with this, which I think is highly situational. I think this would be a S tier if the Civ got knights. And, you know, Jim Stradamus's prediction here is that I think Dravidians are going to get knights. And I don't have any insider information. I'm just looking into my crystal ball. And so, yeah, I think at the moment this is more A tier. I think this pushes S tier on closed maps, though. So, pretty good technology. All right, next up we have the Ethiopians. Ethiopians, torsion engines. I'll put it in the B tier. I think it's good. You know, it's a pretty hefty price tag, 100 food, 600 gold. It really does give your siege a lot more punch, helping you turn the tide of battle. I don't find it used as much as I think you would. I think a lot of that has to do with the cost. And siege is pretty dominant as is, so I think it's working a bit above the margins, actually. I just don't think it's quite in the A tier. Next up with the Franks, we have the Chivalry technology, increasing your stable's work rate by 40%. This is either S or A tier for me. I think it's S tier You just get a crazy knight or light cavalry spam, and this can allow you to take over games. Despite the fact that your light cavalry is not that good, you can just get really solid knight numbers out in the field as well, and your knights are already really strong. The price tag for the kind of units you're making, the fact that it's so much wood, I think is good for the Franks. And remember, you're getting all your farming upgrades for free, so you're sort of indirectly saving a lot of wood as the game goes on, I think. And to put it into perspective, this in Battle of Africa 3, right? Shout out to MemTV for hosting that. This technology, when we would see Franks, it's so strong that we often saw it researched before Paladin. So that should tell you something, that people would prioritize this first oftentimes. So, you know, I mean, it's just, I mean, in team games, it's like easy S tier. For 1v1s, I still think with the light cav spam, boy, you can just roll opponents with that. Next up with Goth's Perfusion. Again, I think I gotta put this in the S tier. It's kind of like Frank Chivalry. It's increasing the work rate of your barracks by 100%. These are barracks that already work faster. Perfusion is what fuels the Goth infantry spam in late game. This is the nightmare that your opponents have when they see that you queued up Goth. This is their nightmare since Dark Age, Feudal Age, Castle Age. This is what you worry about. If Goths can get to Perfusion and get the flood going, it's often too late. And I think it makes Goths so strong that it has to be in the S tier. Next up we have Gurjara. Gurjara, I think Frontier Guards is B tier. It's a really good tech. You're probably making a lot of camels with Gurjaras, getting you +4 melee armor. And it's really a must get because it enables you to take much better fights against infantry late, and you know, and you're already so good against heavy cavalry anyways. This just makes you even better, and it really helps you against people who can match camels with you. So like going up against, like, you know, maybe Hindustanis or Malians. I actually played a game, an Empire Wars game, and I was really outnumbered in camels, and I used this technology to really help work my way back into it. I don't think that this helps the Elephant Archer line that much because it does affect them, and it's 800 food, 700 gold. Whew, very expensive. Elephant Archers, I think it's kind of meh. Your biggest fears are skirmishers, so B tier overall. It can give you an advantage, but it is, I don't think it's necessarily soul crushing for your opponents. Hindustanis, Shatagni, giving your hand cannons, your already better armored hand cannons, up to 9 range. I'm gonna put this in the A tier. This in part has to do with strategy. You have like top 2 camels, and you have a Huskarl Eagle Warrior hybrid. That basically what this does is late game infantry, the swordsman line, is often a way you need to go with the Hindustanis, and the Shatani tech giving you 9 range is insane. The problem with hand cannons, though, is that they're just not that accurate. And so having 9 range with hand cannons, I think, is a bit of a false flag. Maybe, or a red herring, or some, you know, funny idiom like that. Oftentimes I think you just don't hit as much. And if your opponent can get to skirmishers, elite skirmishers out in the field, I think it can do a lot to negate this. You know, pairing them with Gulam is good, but again, remember, you also got to research chemistry. I think it's just a little hard to get to. I will say this technology, very affordable, 500 food, 300 gold. It's pushing S tier. It's so close. But I just think that it can just be because you have to wait for chemistry to come in to be able to make hand cannoneers. I think that timing issue, I think it can hold back this unit. It's more of a mid-Imperial tech. And I just think it's holding you back. Whereas you take a look at like Frank Chivalry, Gothic Perfusion, boom, you're cranking that out. You can crank that out early Imperial Age, right? It's really close, though. If somebody said that Shiitagani was S tier, I'd believe them and have no trouble. Speaking of something that is not S tier or A tier, Hun's Atheism, unfortunately, is a D tier technology. You know, it's letting you reduce 50% of your enemy relic gold, but it costs 500 food, 500 gold. The problem is that it just really doesn't pay off, and Hun's late game is really not all that great anyways. So I just don't think it's giving you that big advantage. I've recommended, I think this tech needs to be changed to where Huns get some of that gold. I think that that would be a much better technology and introduce some really interesting dynamics into the game. But hey, developers, listen to me. With that being said, right, moving on to the Incas. Incas with fabric shields, 600 food, 600 gold, giving your slingers, your Kamiuk, and eagles +1/+2 armor. This is a really great technology. Really great technology. I think it's close to S tier. And this is why. Because the American civs are all very gold dependent for the most part. And it's helping you keep those gold units alive. And so if you're going, you know, if you have Kamiuks, somebody makes Arbalest to defend against you, you have a lot more survivability. Your slingers are going to fare much better. Your eagles are going to melt. Archers, they're going to be able to just, you know, take a beach out there, you know, on the fields of, you know, on the fields of Arbalest. I think it's really strong. I think it's the only thing I'm debating right now is to put it in S tier. And you know what? I think I'm going to do it just because it affects so many units that basically any strategy that you're going for with Incas, this is going to make it a lot stronger. And having the Pierce armor means that it's just hard for units to really... I don't know. This is so close. Because the Pierce armor is the main advantage here. So if somebody's going swordsman against you, right, then you just make slinger. It's got to be S tier. Because everything that somebody uses to counter this unit, you can make another counter that has more armor. Let's say somebody goes infantry to deal with your eagles. Great, make slingers. Boom. Now you have what, a unit that honestly is like on par, if not better than a hand cannoneer, because it benefits from archer upgrades. So yeah, up S tier. Let's go. Italians, I gotta put it in the D tier. Cheaper trade carts is only helping out in team games. It's it's useless in a 1v1. I think it's good, but in a world where resources are kind of infinite in team games anyways, it's good, it's affordable, but we can put it in the C tier. It's helping you. I just don't think if it affected your allies, I'd feel differently, but you could be ahead, but if your allies are still making full cost trade cards, you still wind up losing. Team games are more about coordination and teamwork. Japanese, Cataparuto. It's either B or a C tier. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the B tier. It's really strong. It can help you win Treb Wars. Just because you're getting at so many shots out on the field. I think the best thing about it is it enables you to disengage your Trebs from battle because they pack and unpack faster, in addition to firing faster. It's very expensive, 750 wood, 500 gold. I would love to see this technology changed, actually. I don't think I see it researched enough, and I think that there's better technologies that could be used. Maybe I'll put that in a video sometime soon. My thoughts on that. But anyways, let me know in the comment section below if you want to see a video that includes that in there. What my thoughts should be, or what what the Imperial Age tech for Japanese should actually do. But yeah, B tier. might help you win some games, but not necessarily in a decisive way. Khmer. Oh, Khmer. Khmer double crossbow, right? Ballista elephants and scorpions firing an extra bolt. This is really good stuff. And it can really turn the tides of battle in your favor. If you have, I mean, your army can be kind of unapproachable with this technology if you have the numbers. It'd be really, really hard to stop. So, I still think that bombard cannons are a big problem for the Scorpion line in general. You know, in general what we got going on here. But otherwise, it's pretty darn good. Koreans, giving your Mangina line extra range. Again, I think that's strong too. I think you'll still die to bombard cannons. Bombard cannons are so useful, y'all. If you're not making them, you probably should find a way to. It's decently affordable, I would say. 800 wood, 500 gold. You know, I think that, I just think late game, because if you're on arena, right, bombard cannons will counter this. That's why bombard cannons are so important on arena. And then in open maps, I think when you're taking out an enemy village, it'd be one thing if you had better halbs with Koreans maybe to supplement it, or better infantry. I don't know. I just don't think it quite gets us there. It'll help, but all these things, all these technologies help you. So next up we have Lithuanians, tower shields. Oh yeah, halbs and skirmishers getting more armor. I think this is C tier. It helps cover up a deficiency on your halberdiers, missing the last armor upgrade. Your halbs is still going to kind of stink because you don't get blast furnace. Your skirmishers now have great pierce armor, but they would be fully upgraded and moving faster otherwise, so they're still good. It's really affordable. It's the best thing about this tech. 500 food, 200 gold, so you can easily get it. But again, skirmishers are probably not the unit. That's not a power unit. And so making your power unit more survivable against units for which it already has a lot of survivability, that's not really giving us what we need to end battles decisively. So now, a technology that I think is helping us win battles decisively is the Magyar's recurve bow tech. I'm going to put it all the way up in the S tier, y'all. Having +1 range, +1 attack on your cav archers gives you, I say instantly, the best cav archers in the game. It's basically one half of the Magyar's, ultimate unstoppable army comp with heavy cav archer and the Magyar hussar. It's not that taxing on your gold, right? It's only going to cost you 400 gold and 600 wood, and it just gives you range kills, but then having the extra damage as well. This is a fantastic technology. This is what gives, a lot of people think Magyars have perhaps the best late game army in the game, and this technology is a major reason why. Alright, Malay with forced levy. I think it's going to be another B tier technology for me. I just think that this is a great example of a technology I mentioned earlier where it's extending games rather than decisively closing them out. Removing the gold cost on your two-handed swordsman is nice. It can help you win games for sure, but you gotta remember, two-handed swordsmen are not mobile, they're not champions, and so they can get cleared out, and it's just a little too slow. I think if you'd asked me if I could have hussars and research the hussar upgrade or go for like forced levy, I think I'd choose hussars every time, because at least hussars are able to close the gaps with archers. They're able to move on to new locations quickly. I just think the speed is really important there. So I have a B tier. It's still a good technology if you need to extend the game, but again, like I mentioned earlier, there's some disadvantages to that. For Rimba with the Malians, I think this is a good A tier tech. What I like about it, right, it's giving you your cavalry +5 attack, and what I like about it is it affects a lot of different units, right? Your cavalry archers, not cavalry archers, your cavalier, right? Your cavalier are going to get the advantage of that. Your camels will get it. Your light cavalry, when you're going into a trash composition, it's very strong. My only problem with it is that it is kind of compensating for a weakness of the fact that you miss Blast Furnace, so it's really like giving you +3 damage compared to a fully upgraded Cavalier, Camel, or Light Cavalry. And it is costing food and gold, which will eat into your production a little bit. But if you're playing Malians and you're going Cavalry in the late game, you should definitely get it. It is a nice power spike. Mayans, Eldorado, 40 more HP for your Eagles. God, this is so S tier. I think it's not even... Honestly, you just get insane Eagles. The only catch is that a patch, I think a year or so ago, made it take 70 seconds to research, but that just means, you know, that you have 30 more seconds for you to survive. They're just... Eldorado Eagles are nuts. Mongol Drill? Another great technology. A lot of S-tier technologies. I don't think that unique technologies in Imperial Age are a normal distribution, I gotta say. You know, because again, we got a column like we see them. Drill is quite affordable, only 500 food, 450 gold, and you can close out games very quickly with much faster moving siege. Ferrari siege rams, onagers that are darting around the field. This is very good. It's very affordable. Outstanding. Next up, we have the Persians. Faster elephants goes into the D tier. You're still going to get converted by monks, and now your opponent has faster elephants. No, thank you. Next up, we move on to the Poles. Trample damage for your light cavalry line. I think this is really, really strong. It gives your light cavalry a lot more DPS. It can turn fights around, help you deal with halbs. I think it's probably closer to A tier. I think it's really closer to A tier. It's pretty darn expensive, though. It's really expensive. 750 food, 550 gold. And remember, the Winged Hussar tech is more expensive on top of it. It's really, really good, though. And it can be difficult for units to take fights against it. I think I gotta... The more I talk about it, I think I gotta put it in the A tier. You know, just because you can spam so many Winged Hussars with the Poles, and that's just enabling you to get out a lot more DPS in the field, and it's difficult for opponents to be able to run away from Winged Hussars. That, I think, is the key. It's the mobility. Next up with the Portuguese Arquebus. I think it is helpful. It's nice to have your hand cannoneers, you know, be affected by ballistics. It's nice for your gunpowder to be able to hit moving targets a bit better. And you're probably making gunpowder with Portuguese. I just think that, you know, there's not as much micro in late game army fights. And so I think it's helpful more around the margins than anything. Saracen counterweights? I think this is another B tier technology. Having more damage on your trebs is really helping you win some treb wars, but also for your siege onagers. That's really good too. I think that this is one of these technologies that 15% seems like a small bonus, but it takes you... I think there's a lot of units in the game where you go from taking 2 shots to kill with an onager to now only 1 shot, and that matters a lot. That's a much bigger increase than I think the 15% immediately suggest. Next up, Sicilians, Halberd, +1 melee, +2 pierce armor for the Knight line. Easy S tier. Might be the definition of OP. It's for a unit that's already taking half bonus damage from units like Halberdiers. Boy. Would not surprise me to see this get changed at some point. People complain about it so much. It has had its cost increase to 700 food, 600 gold. But you can still get to it. Because you're not researching Paladin with a civ, so you're not really saving for that upgrade. And you can get to Halberd with the civ. Slav Druzina. Oh, man. Is this going to be my controversial one? It's either A or S tier. So here's an argument for A tier. Let's see how this sounds. Druzina is great. It gives your infantry trample damage. This pairs them well with your really cheap siege units, right? Here's the problem. There's a few problems. One, you're dealing with infantry. Infantry are slow. Two, Slavs don't get bombard cannons. So if you're up against ranged units, like somebody going arbalist, halberdier, bombard cannon, which a number of civs can do, if that siege gets taken out, your infantry, your Drusina, isn't going to help you. The third thing is 1,200 food, 500 gold. Very, very expensive. This is why, for me, my instinct here is to put it in the A tier. I just worry that you're going to research it, and if you're up against the wrong army comp, you're not going to actually get the effect of this really coming through. Basically, if you're up against bombard cannons and arbalist, I think this just gets really, really tough. I think even somebody spamming light cav even into Halb Siege, hopefully it will, you can, if they have a big economy, the halberdiers should be able to take care of them, but even just losing a couple siege weapons can be really difficult. And if it weren't so dang expensive, but it's one of the most expensive techs in the game, especially in the food cost, and you need food with the Slavs, but you do have better farmers, it's so close. It's slow, it's so close. I just can think of several weaknesses to it. And that's a lot of resources to spend on something that, well, if all those infantry start dying to archers, or those halberdiers dying to skirmishers, you see what I mean? Like, I think in general, these techs that are buffing infantry just don't, for me, don't quite make it into the S tier, with the exception, really, of Goths increasing that production, because the flood is so difficult to stop, because it's also affecting Huskarls, which wreck archers. So, yeah, I think I gotta keep it in the A tier, but if you disagree with me, well, I encourage that. Spanish supremacy is another one that people might get upset about. I think it's D tier. I'm sorry. Like, here's the problem with Spanish supremacy. Yes, having the equivalent of longswords is nice, and I know people love the meme supremacy rushes. The problem is, though, it's because of the villager micro when they're attacking. You have to make them attack something else. They bunch up a lot. They're still gonna die to archers and things like, I mean, I can't put it in C tier. I don't think I've ever seen a competitive game where I felt this was the winning move. You're not going to close out games quickly with this. You're going to make games more difficult at best. But I think you're going to spend so much time microing. And remember, if you're taking villagers away to micro, you're not producing any economy. And if you just say, well, look, I'll just keep spamming villagers. Yeah, but then you have to keep clicking on them to attack things and micro things. If villager micro when they were fighting were different and you could put them like on attack mode, I feel completely differently. This might even be like a B tier tech to me. The way villager micro currently is, nah, sorry. Not doing it. Tatters, Timurid Siegecraft. +2 range in your trebs, unlock flaming camels. Care about the former? Don't really care about the latter. The sniper game trebs are really great. Helps you take better fights. But I think it's just helping you take better fights as opposed to winning you games necessarily. I think you're going to win games through heavy cav archer hussar, and this is just going to help you, keep the trebuchets at a distance, keep them upright. It's good, and it's affordable, 500 wood, 400 gold. I just don't think it's quite getting us into the A tier. Teuton Crenellations. I like this as an A tier tech. I think this is really good. Your castles are going to get extra range. You have 13 range in the end, so it's like +3 range. Also, garrison infantry can fire arrows. This is really strong. Basically, bombard cannons, other than Turkish bombard cannons, which I'll talk about in a second, are no longer a threat to your castles. Really only worried about trebs. That is fantastic. it helps overcome the fact they don't have Bracer. Garrison Teutonic Knights is good for increasing some DPS because those are slow units and you might want to garrison them inside your castles for a bit to just heal because you get free herbal medicine. It just synergizes really well with the civ. One of the things that I don't like about it, and for me does keep it from being in the S tier in part, is just that it costs so much stone. I'd kind of like to see that changed. I think this is one of these techs that keeps you more from losing games than winning games because it's just so good for map control. And so I think on like closed maps like Arena Black Forest, you know, you might put this in the S tier. I think on more open maps, it's still really strong, but probably closer to B+. I think it's a solid A tier. Next up, Turkish artillery. You know what? You know, you want to run it. You want to have another controversial take here. Here's one. I think this is a good tech, but the thing I always ask myself here is that would I rather have 14 range bombard cannons with no siege engineers, for instance, or 13 range bombard cannons with siege engineers? I think the answer to that question seems to me that if I'm up against opponent siege, I think I'd rather have the Turkish bombard cannons and just have the range because you can micro take fights. If I'm trying to destroy enemy castles, I think I want the 13 range with siege engineers. And that to me is what puts it into the B tier. Yes, you have so many bonuses with the Turks to your gunpowder. I go over that in other videos. And so I just sometimes find that it can be underwhelming in some situations. But it's still really good. Again, I think you're still winning games with other units here, but it's a powerful tech. Don't underestimate it, but also if you're trying to push a lot of castles, you kind of have to mix in trebuchets, and again, that to me is a bit of a problem. Vietnamese paper money. I'll also put this in the... I'll put this in the B... You know what? I think I gotta put this in the C tier, actually. This is why. So, this is one of these techs I think has a lot of potential. Basically, you know, the way the math works out, it's like having an extra relic for about every 24 to 25 lumberjacks. That's great. I think it takes a little while to pay off. But you gotta keep in mind, it is cheaper than, say, Hun's Atheism, for instance. And differing from Hun's Atheism, this is giving you gold, which is better. And not only that, but the Vietnamese have a really good late game. You have a fairly open tech tree with some good archers. I would say, decent, maybe even above average light cav and, some good cavaliers. You just have a lot of options with Vietnamese late, and so I do think playing into a Vietnamese late game is very scary for other civilizations. But again, it's just putting you in a position where, it's really kind of up to you and your strategy to execute it. And an Imperial Age tech, right? I want to be able to win games now, I think. At least, remember, with an Imperial Age tech, right? I feel differently about Castle Age and Feudal Age. Vikings, I gotta put this in the D tier. I'm sorry. I could probably, to quote an old Dennis Miller line, I could count on the hand of a bad woodshop teacher how many times I've seen Berserker Gang utilized. I hardly ever see it. It's pretty expensive. 850 food, 400 gold. Infantry have a lot more trouble disengaging from the battlefield. And so I think oftentimes in Imperial Age, you just don't get the chance to use it. Because again, it's not like Castle Age when you might be playing, to get that Imperial Age power spike. Like a lot of times you might do for, Arbalest civs or, something like that. Like you're just not really playing for that late game power spike. Vikings are a civ. Because they have not that great of a late game, they need to win early Imperial Age. And researching Elite Berserker, you know, if you're up against cavalry, trying to get something like chieftains, which is insanely expensive, and then trying to get berserker gang, it costs too much. It just costs too much. And to do all of that in the time window that the civilization needs it. So I just don't. I would rather see berserker gang changed, put the increased HP regeneration into the elite berserk, and then give the Vikings something else. But that's a topic for another day, because we've come to the end of this tier list video. Some controversial takes as I'm reviewing this, looking it over, but I gotta say, I think I'm pretty happy with this. And I think that just looking at the distribution of things, there's a lot of really good Imperial Age technologies. Imperial Age technologies really can change the character of games, and so that's why this is not going to look like a bell curve here, where we have a lot in the middle and a very, very small S tier, A tier, that sort of thing. There are a lot of civilizations with these techs that can get the job done, and so you're going to want to think about how to incorporate that into your army. And if you're up in late game and you're facing one of these civilizations, be very, very careful. You know, you want to let Magyars get to the late game with recurve bow cav archers, or Goths, right, with, you know, perfusion barracks? I don't think so, right? Try and kill those civs before you let them get to that point. With that being said, I'm Jimmy James 59, and I will see you guys out there on the ladder, and you can hear my charming voice in the next video. Peace.